Today we are going to knit our gusset, so we're going to pick up our heel stitches, but instead of turning our work again, we're going to start back to working in the round. So we'll use the slip stitches that we did as part of the heel flap to pick up stitches along the side. And then we will turn and pick up our instep stitches, and we'll start working those again. We'll then work down the other side of the heel flap using the slip stitches on the other side, and then come all the way back to the start of our round, and we will be ready to get working in the round. And once we've done that, we'll be able to shape our gussets. So the first thing we're going to do now is get ready to work in the regularly as we were doing previously. So if you're going to change colours, if you've done a contrast heel, this is the point, either before or after you knit across the heel stitches. It's kind of a personal choice. So I'm going to knit the first 5 stitches across. If you have a larger size, you'll have more stitches in your heel. So I'm going to place a marker at this point. And you can place a marker either now or after you've finished your gusset pickup. It doesn't really matter. It may say otherwise in the pattern, but as long as you know where your start of round is. Because it used to be here, kind of below your tail yarn where you cast on, but now it's at the bottom of the sole rather than at the side. It's slightly more relevant when you're using double pointed needles to know that the start of round has moved, but it's always useful to know exactly where it is, because a lot of the shaping takes place around the instep markers, which we'll show you in a minute. So if you knit across the next 5 stitches of your heel, you'll have more if you make a different size. Get yourself some yarn. That would be ready to pick up the stitches along the side of the heel flap. So this is why you slip those stitches, because they're much easier to see as you pick them up rather than picking up a knit stitch or a purl stitch. So what you do is that find them where they are, and you can kind of pick them out really easily. So turn your flap over fully to make sure that you have the whole of the stitch and that you're not picking up bits from underneath as well. So it's the 2 bars in this pattern. Some people pick up 1. All of my patterns are to pick up 2, to pick up both bars of the slip stitch. So then you're going to knit them. So this is essentially like a pick up and knit, only you're not really picking up, it's slightly different. So you put your needle in, go around it as if to knit, and then bring it out to create the stitch. Now you will see that it looks a little bit gappy as we pull it up, but we will fix that in the next round. So doing the stitching correctly then, if I pick up 3 bars, you can actually see how it looks wrong when how it looks incorrect when you pick them up like that. So you could now go back and pick up the 2, because what's happening is that you pick up the 2 bars of your slip stitch, and then beside that you have the next row of stitches, essentially the next line of stitches, and that will show you kind of where you are correct or incorrect as well. So that should look nice and even along the same line. So here I'm picking one up, just 1 bar, and again you can see that they're now out of alignment. So then you keep picking up the stitches, and it's 9. And generally, in a lot of patterns, it'll be half the number of rows in your heel flap. That will vary, but in this one it is. So I've done 18 rows of heel flap, and I have 9 slip stitches on each side. So I've now picked up my 9 stitches. The next thing we're going to do, and in the pattern it says to pick up 2 additional stitches up into the leg of the sock, and I'll show you how to do that. The reason you do it is because if I went straight from where I am now across to the instep stitches, you would get a bit of a gappy hole. So you're trying to avoid that. So what you do now is you pick up along the same line as of stitches that you've already picked up along. You're just not picking up slip stitches because you don't have them. So you can see where I'm picking those up. I'm going in along the line of stitches that I've already picked up, and I'm going to knit that. And then I'm going to knit the next one above it. So you can see that they're in a line still. So yep, if you go in there and knit those, you'll know very quickly as well if you're wrong, because it'll pull a lot and you'll still have a hole. It'll be distorting all the stitches around it. So that is how you do your best to avoid the holes. Then you'll be knitting those kind of tightly as you go along. So that's it. You can see it goes slightly above the instep stitches up the leg, and that is the whole idea of it. So that's your 9 and your 2 extra. The next thing you're going to do then is you're going to place a marker, and this is your start of instep marker in your patterns. And the reason you place this is that a lot of shaping takes place around that marker. So you place that start of instep marker just before the unworked stitches, which are your instep stitches, and then you're going to knit across the instep. So you knit over across your instep, and obviously because we're working in magic loop, I would come through about halfway here. If I'm using magic loop to do this, I'll go about halfway across the instep to match the center of round, and I'll kind of keep my cable coming through at those points when I'm doing magic loop. Now, just to say in terms of the leg as well, if you are working a pattern that had a patterned part of the leg, as you come to work the instep stitches, it may tell you to continue pattern as set, or it might tell you a specific row of a chart or a pattern to start at. It'll depend on the pattern, but it is at this point where you kind of want to start working any pattern you were doing the leg again now as you go into the foot. So I'm just going to come round to the magic loopy piece again, and I'm going to continue knitting across the rest of the instep stitches. So as with magic loop, make sure you keep that nice and kind of snug in against the one as you were changing needles. Apologies, this is off the screen, but I'm just knitting the rest of the instep stitches. And once you come to the end of these instep stitches, you'll place another marker, and that is the end of instep stitch marker in the pattern that you're following for the short and long circular needles. So this is as important because this is the matching stitch marker for the one that you just put in. They don't have to be the same color. That's a quirk of which one I picked up first while making the tutorial. So now you have two markers that start and end your instep. Now you're going to pick up down along the other side as well. What I always do here is I find, because you're putting two stitches in, like you did on the other side, I find the 9 places I'm going to make the stitches that I want to pick up along the flap, and then I work out where I want to put my 2 extra ones along the line. Sometimes you will get a little hole here that is harder to avoid, and that is because there is a pull on some of the stitches. What I would do with that is I pull really tightly as I come out of this to make sure that they're very close, but also then I will cheat a little bit sometimes and fix them on the inside as well. You shouldn't get too much. I would give it a good tight pull though, so that they're nice and close in together, because you're more likely to get one on this side, and I don't know why that is, but I get more little holes on this side than I do on the other. But with some wear they vanish as well. So now I'm picking up into the stitches again like I did. So I've picked up my 2 and I'm going to pick up the other 9. You can see there that that's something that's because the stitch is stretched a little bit on the inside. But you're off anyway. So now you're going to work down the rest of the stitches into the back again, and you can see that these are being picked up in a line like the others. Try not to split your yarn. Don't split your yarn. And then you've made your stitch. And then once you've picked up your 9 stitches, 11 in total, so all of your slip stitches along the heel, a common issue here is actually that you have too many slip stitches, not too many, but you might have started too high up your leg, or you might be too low down your leg, and that's why I tend to count out where I'm going to do my stitches on this side before I make my 2 stitches to make sure I'm positioning them as correctly as possible. I then knit across the rest of my instep, across the rest of my foot back to the start of round. So once you come to the start of round, we can have a bit of a look at what we've done. So you have now picked up and started working back in the round, and that is the most sockish part of any sock. So if you're here, you are pretty much done now. So what you can see is it has taken your stitches across your heel, picked up along the side, reincorporated your instep stitches across, and then you have down the other side of the flap and onto your heel. And now you are ready to shape the gusset, and you're going to do that along the instep markers. So now that you've admired your gusset, we're going to get ready to start working in the round again. So I'm going to pull my cable through about halfway through the instep. It doesn't make a huge difference where you do this, just wherever you're comfortable, because you're going to be working in stocking stitch all the way along. So you're going to get ready to work. And now the first round is a knit round. So your gusset decreasing is worked in multiple, in a knit round and a decrease round. There's one slight difference in the first knit round, and we'll cover that this time around, but it's a knit round followed by a decrease round. So we'll start with the knit round. So the most important thing about this knit round is that you are going to do something slightly different on this round with the stitches that you picked up last time, and this is important as it adds a bit of strength to your sock. So you knit your 5 stitches, and then what you're going to do when you come to these stitches is you are going to knit into the back of the stitch that you've picked up last time. And the reason you do this is to make sure that it doesn't have a little gap in it, because it crosses the stitch and it makes it a little bit stronger. So you do that to all of your stitches, all 11 that I've picked up, or how many ever you've picked up, and you can see there how that is got little cross stitches rather than being kind of gappy. Otherwise it would look like you had picked up a yarn over. So you do that into all of the stitches all the way up to the start of round, or apologies, start of instep stitch marker. And once you are there, you will see that you have them all picked up, and they're a little bit tighter because they've all been knit through the back loop. Now on the next round, which is the decrease round, and all the knit rounds from here, you don't do that again. You only do that in this round. Then you continue across your instep stitches, and again you can see how you've closed up your little hole there, and that is, you have successfully picked up all of your stitches and made them tighter, which is great. So now we're going to work across here, and yes, as I was saying, if you are working, you're continuing in pattern, you'll be doing it along here. And then obviously you come and you want to switch over your needles. So pulling one out, and do pull it out, or do push all your stitches onto the needles before pulling out your other one ready to work. I just find it a bit easier. Then you'll continue on to the end of the instep stitches. Again, getting nice and close in for the first stitch as you move away from, to make sure it's nice and tight. So then once you get to the instep marker, you slip that, and now what you're going to do is down along this row as well, you're going to work into the back of the 11 stitches on this side, or more if you're doing a different size. So you can see here, if I left that untwisted, it would be a bigger stitch than the twisted one. So we're just going to knit into the back of that as well, and we knit into them all the way down, back to the heel flap, and the heel turn, the heel stitches, and then you're going to just knit across those regularly, and then you will be ready to start the first decreasing round of your gusset. So you're now back to your stitches here, and you're going to just knit across those. So that is the first round worked of your gusset. Pull through your cable for working again, and you're now ready to work the first decrease round. Don't forget your marker, of course. So you are going to work to 3 stitches before the instep marker, and you will work to the end of instep marker then, because your shaping takes place on the underside of your foot rather than any of the instep. The instep is not changed during this part either. The shaping all takes place on the foot, on the bottom of the foot. But you'll see that as we go around. So now you knit to 3 steps before the start of instep marker. And as we come here to these stitches, you'll just see that we knit these regularly. We don't knit into the back of those picked up stitches anymore. That was just in the first round. So we're now here, and this decrease that you use here is a knit 2 together. So you knit those 2 stitches together, and that's your first decrease worked. You knit the stitch, and you slip the stitch, and then you work across your instep stitches. So that's the first decrease, and on the other side you're going to do a matching decrease, which is a slip, slip, knit, and that is your first decrease round worked for your gusset shaping. All while keeping your magic loop in in order. So you just need to, now it is after the end of instep marker, it's not before it. So just to be sure that you work all of the instep stitches before doing the shaping. So now you're going to slip the marker, you're going to knit 1, and then you're going to do a slip, slip, knit. So you're going to slip them both knitwise, put them back onto your left needle and knit the 2 of them through the back loops. And that gives you your matching decrease. Then you're just going to continue on to the end of this round, and then you will continue shaping your gusset. With your gusset, the next round will be knit, then there'll be another decreasing round, and eventually what happens is you come around to where you have an even number, the same number of stitches on the instep as you have on the base, and it'll be the same as where you started for the leg. So that's kind of, it's a bit of a symmetry thing with socks. And well, in this pattern anyway, other patterns may vary, and they probably do, but you'd always see the number of stitches you're expecting to have after the decrease shaping anyway. So you can just hear you picked up, you started your shaping, and eventually you'll come back to having the same number of stitches. I will be back to you after I've finished all of the shaping. So now you've worked all of your decreases, and we are back, and we have the same number of stitches in the instep as we have on the sole of the foot. Something to watch for here, and it's not uncommon, is that you might find that you have an uneven number of stitches. You might have decreased one on more on one side than on the other. Just keep working as long as it's not interfering with any pattern that you have in the sock. I doubt there are any sock knitters out there who haven't done a misshapen gusset at some point. If it's a plain stocking stitch sock, nobody's going to notice when you get back to the right number of stitches. And then we continue on in the next tutorial to knit the foot and shape the toe.